Welcome back to another episode of the Heroic Industries podcast, and I am just getting off of a little vacation. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. There we go. I'm coming off a little bit of a vacation, a little break from the job, and always well needed, well rested, I guess, maybe. You get to a point where it's like, when you're new, you get off for an extended period of time and you're ready to come back and get after it. And then when you've been on for a while, it's kind of like, I'm ready just to be done. And I don't ever want to come back to work, ever. So another a thing that kind of made me think of that, it was like, somebody said something the other day to me. It was like, yeah, all jobs suck. That's why you get paid money for them. I think it was actually on The Simpsons. So anyway. Went out to the Wisconsin Dells. Weird place. Kind of a neat place, but a real weird place. If you ever get a chance, go check it out. It's interesting, to say the least. Tourist trap, but I like those places, so it was all good. All right, this is probably the best show we've ever done. I know I say that every time, but this is for real. This is the best show we've done. So I talked to CJ Delany. CJ is an academy instructor out in New York. I think he said the name of his department, but I'm not going to get into it. If you figure it out, you can do it yourself. I don't want to cross any boundaries there and get anybody in trouble, namely him or me. So he's an academy instructor out in New York. He has a great accent. Sounds like everybody loves Raymond. So that'll be good. And then he's done a lot of stuff, man. He's done work. He got on the job in like 2001 and did some work at Ground Zero, which we didn't touch on too much. And I wish I would have, but he's taught Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to cops and to military while on deployment. He's been a black belt instructor at his gym and probably some other gyms too. I think we talked about that too. Since 2015, he currently coaches for Monster Jiu-Jitsu, also out in New York, and actually trained under Matt Serra. So if you know Matt Serra, you know he was a UFC champion, and that's pretty legit. So some of the stuff we got a chance to talk about, state management, which is always a big thing I like talking about, professionalism and what that really means on the job, and then how to survive, but also how to thrive through the job, and then that it seems like that conversation always leads into issues of mental health and how to stay mentally healthy and robust on the job. So check it out. Let me know what you think, and enjoy. Yeah, right. Technology seems to be always the issue. Like, it should work, but it never does, and it can't be operator error. It's definitely not that. Like, it's got to be the technology.
It's always operator error.
No, I choose to say it is the technology's fault. It can't be my fault. I go the opposite direction of Jocko Willink. No ownership whatsoever.
Yeah, I guess that's my problem. Is I always, like me, I'm old school, man. I don't even use a backup camera.
Yeah,
that thing's gonna beep one day. I'm gonna hit something anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't do that because I don't want to have one installed and buy a car that's newer than 2003. So
Nice.
So what's up, man? Thanks for coming on. How's it going?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's going good. Thanks for having me. I've been watching you put a lot of good positive stuff out there. So that's pretty much what I'm trying to do. Just surround myself with positive, like-minded people that want to see a culture change, all along and everything, So you've been putting out some good stuff. Feel like we're kind of like in line with a lot of our thought process on stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And it's always nice to actually use the social media to connect with people the way it was intended, not the way that it's being perverted and destroyed, like destroying people's minds, So, all right. So let's just, I've been watching your stuff for a while, definitely since I've been getting more into jiu-jitsu and like broadening my like physical training. But like, give me an idea on just your background and like where you come from and where you're at and kind of who you are, just like a little synopsis.
Yeah, well, I didn't do any martial arts or anything throughout my whole life, pretty much, until I got into my late mid-20s. The only reason why I did is because I got a job in law enforcement here in Suffolk County, Long Island, New York, with the sheriff's office, and I got hired as a correctional officer. And I was like, you know what? One of my academy instructors told me, he goes, listen, what we're teaching you right now in this 40-hour block, it's good, but the only thing I say is do something afterwards. And I took what he told me to heart, and I just started going out and looking around. I dibbled and dabbled a little bit in different arts, and they didn't really feel like they were effective to what I needed them for. So then I said, oh, let me try this jujitsu thing. And just by chance, I went to a gym, and there was, a regular gym, and there was a guy in the back that trained it, and the guy was awesome. He was from Colorado, and I paid him $100 a month, and I would just go back there, and it was like no bowing in, bowing out. It was just, we grinded every day for hours on end because I didn't have kids, and it was good. And I was like, this is effective. This is what's going to make it work. And then at the same time, I felt it was doing a lot for me, cardiovascular wise, physical wise, and all that. So I started when I was 26, and I jumped from a school to a different school just basically because of on Long Island here, he moved from one area to another area, and it was just too far outside my range with time availability and all that. So then I started training over at Matt Serra's a little bit. A lot of people know who Matt is.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good one.
Yeah, so, and it was a good thing. But the previous school I was at was Kyoto, and I have nothing bad to say about him. I'm actually glad I started there because he really pushed the fundamentals, control, side control, mount, and all that stuff. And he jammed it down your throat so much that it built a really good foundation for me, so that when I did go over to Matt's and started training, I started to really build off of that, which was good. And then one of the instructors there I liked, he ended up going and opened up his own school, which was literally around the block from me. So I talked to Matt, and I was like, hey, do you mind if I go over and train with Rich? And he goes, yeah, no, he's my black belt. He's one of my top guys. Go train with him. So I finished out my journey with Rich as far as getting my black belt. So I started training in 2001, and I got my black belt in 2015. But in the middle of that, I had a deployment overseas as well. So I didn't have structural classes over there, but we hooked up with the Hawaiians and the guys from South Dakota. So they were big in wrestling and grappling. So we still did train over there, which was pretty cool. And then due to where I was training down the South Shore, I moved up onto the North Shore. So I found a place close to me up here to train. And that's where I ended up now at Monster. And one of the owners at Monster, he's the second precinct cop over here. Really great guy, probably one of the best that I've ever rolled with. I don't think there's a man on planet Earth that can beat him. He'll say that he thinks people can, but he's just a phenom. He's incredible. So I'm very lucky that I train underneath him now, and the guys over at Monster, and that's where I get to instruct. And through my time and tenure on the job, I'm now an academy instructor here. So we do a lot of DT here, but I truly believe jiu-jitsu is really made for law enforcement, controlling somebody quickly, get it over with, and you get back into that medical aspect of making sure they're good to go.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So, just a couple questions. So you started in 2001 training jiu-jitsu, and that was after you became a police officer, right? So you went through the academy, and then that kind of like spurred you to seek out like the path for you, right?
Yeah. I had one academy instructor. His name was John Nizich. Rest his soul. He died very young, had a heart attack. I think he was 52 years old on his birthday. But when he was my academy instructor, he told me, just do something, because you're never going to remember what we teach you here. And he was honest with me. And I took those words, and that's when I really started training. And I was like, and then I just fell in love with it. So you kind of get bit by it. It's like a virus, you can't get rid of it.
Yeah. It's weird how that goes. Like the more, especially with jiu-jitsu, it seems like I was kind of this way in high school with wrestling, because I only wrestled for like a couple of years. But it was enough to where I would get like just enough reinforcement from beating people every once in a while, but then get humbled and get my ass kicked, and then be like, all right, I gotta get back on the mat, because the motivation of like, you just got beat, you need to go and win. And how do you do that? And how do you like learning the different dynamic of like how to control and move with someone and move someone as they're fighting you is just an entirely different struggle than what like I'm big into CrossFit and weightlifting and stuff like that. Like moving a barbell is a different type of dynamic than it is moving another human. And the different things that flow when you have to deal with that is like you need both. But if you've never wrestled or you've never grappled, like you really have to do it to
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah, and the first thing is just getting in that door, checking your ego. And like I said, thankfully, lucky I had a good place to train, and the guy I trained with, he made you feel comfortable getting your ass kicked. I'm gonna be honest with you, like to walk out of there as a man knowing that you just got ragdolled by a guy half your size, is kind of like, oh man. But he always said, don't just keep on going, and you'll get better, and you'll get better, and eventually it does click. And I got to be honest with you, like I like training with guys that are bigger, stronger, especially wrestlers, because they got such a solid base. Because I know that if I can withstand them or do good with them on the mat here, there's probably nothing that I'll have to deal with in the street or on my job that is going to have to deal with anybody that's going to that could actually do anything. I know with the enhancement of drugs and all that is different realms, but it's just like knowing how you can stay calm in all those situations, and controlling your breathing, and it just works across the board for everything, even with firearms. I think because I've learned how to control my breathing in very stressful situations, that when I am shooting at the range or doing anything, or even when I was in the military, anytime we were doing all that stuff, is like that helps with everything. And I really feel like jiu-jitsu across the board helps with everything, mentally, physically, everything. And that's why I love this so much. That's why I push it so much. But I always tell everybody my way is just a way. It's not, the only way. I feel it's a good way, especially for law enforcement. But it's grappling is dirty, man. You're sweating on each other. It's not for everybody, but it should be. Because it's a primitive sport, man. It dates back how long ago?
Oh, geez. Yeah. To the beginning of humans,
Man,
that far back, like prehistoric times, I'm sure.
Yep.
So, you talk about getting humbled, and you talk about like basically going into, a jujitsu gym or wrestling or whatever, and just kind of getting pounded on. And what I've found is that, like, I never understood, especially running my CrossFit gym, why people would come in, look around, be intimidated, and then bail before they even hit the floor. That was like mind boggling to me. Like, how do people think this way? Just come out and at least do it, at least try it. And why would you just come in, check the lobby, or drive through the parking lot and then leave? And then when I started doing jujitsu more, I started getting that same feeling like, oh man, I really don't want to go in here. I really am trying to feel like the roads are too snowy. I'm trying to find excuses. And then I
Yeah.
caught myself in that whole mess. And I'm like, why do I feel like this? And some of it was that, as a big tough SWAT guy, like a SWAT cop, I'm going in the gym and I'm getting my ass handed to me as a white belt by blue and purple belts that are just like 150-pound dudes off the street. I should be able to hold my own, and it's a serious like kick in the gut, like as far as an ego check, that like I don't want to appear to be weaker than these in as a like I said, the role that I see myself. So do you think that plays into police officers not training? Is there part of that is like hard for cops to get over?
Without a doubt, I see it every single day. I work at the academy here now. I have people that come in that some are very seasoned, some are very like maybe 1 or 2 years on the job, to guys that are on the job 20, 25 years. And we started adding in certain things because New York State is the way they do stuff here is very liberal. Not to get into politics or anything, but they feel like, think one way, and the way their mindset is. But, we have people coming in, to get retrained, like let's just say on handcuffing. And I'll be like, all right, we're going to go over basic handcuffing today. And I have like a 20-year guy saying, oh, I've handcuffed 1 million people. And okay, well, here are the handcuffs. Show everybody how to handcuff somebody. And yeah, you can always get handcuffs on somebody, but there is a technique to it, just like anything else. When you're doing your CrossFit, when we're doing jiu-jitsu, there's technique to everything. When you have the technique, it makes everything better. So it's like practice, the old saying that practice makes perfect. I was just told practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So if you practice something terribly, you're going to be perfect at terrible. But if you keep on practicing something in a good way, that good way becomes that permanent way. So, there are ways of putting on handcuffs the right way. And you see video after video of handcuffs coming out too early. The tasers are out when they should be going hands on, and then now they have the aspartame in their hand. They don't know what to do with it. And this is just all because of undertraining. So, I see it all the time. And what it comes down to is, that salty guy. So I got 20 years on. There's nothing that you can teach me. I'm in a different boat right now because I have 22 years on. And so I go, no, I'm 22 years on, and I still learn every single day. I just went up to a course in Connecticut, an officer survival course hosted by Manchester BJJ, this guy, Rob. And he's like, Chris, you're a black belt. What are you coming to this for? I'm like, because I want to see the way you do things, because everybody has different ways. And I adapted to what's good for me. And I went up there for 8 Thursdays in a row. And I have to be honest with you, I picked up so many little things that it's good. But people get that they put up that thing like, nope, I know what I'm doing. There's nothing you can show me. And I've always been the person who says, no, I want you to show me everything you have. If I like what you're showing me, I'll use it. If I don't, I put it on the back burner. But the ego is definitely a big thing. People don't want to be challenged. They don't want to be embarrassed on the mat. Just like when you do when you go down to the range and you shoot the guns, who wants to shoot a 240? As a man, you go in there, everybody's like, oh, I know how to shoot a gun. You don't have to show me. Yeah, but you're shooting a 230, and you suck. You're not doing good. Your grouping should be this big, but you're really like this. Like we're shooting a 9mm, not a shotgun. And it's just that ego thing. And we just had a recruit class come through, and one of the better people in the DT side of it was a female. And I always tell the recruits, I rather sometimes work with female recruits over male recruits because of the fact that they have no ego. They just want to learn, because to them it's like, no, I never held a gun and it's deemed, okay, or oh, I was never in a fight and it's deemed okay. But as a guy, they're like, oh, you should have been in 100 fights already in your life. You're a man. That's what men do. We fight. And the reality is not many people have been punched in the face, especially nowadays. It's different. Growing up when I was a kid, a fight was a normal thing. You fight with your friend, a week later, you guys are hanging out again. Everything's all good. Today days, they're different. But, tell these guys to get into like a defensive tactics, like get into your fighting stance. And I'm like, that's your fighting stance, and it's just like, but it's like for men, it's accepted. Like you need to know how to fight. You should know how to fight. So it's definitely, that's the biggest obstacle, is that ego and accepting, like, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Show me what I'm doing and lead me to ways that I can get better. And I think if we could change that in the culture, that would be a huge thing. But, that's on an individual. I think, I don't think it could be on like a broad spectrum.
Yeah, it's hard because it comes from like a culture standpoint. It's got to be accepted of like, hey, I'm an alpha. I'm like a warrior. However you see yourself, that's fine. Like an aggressive, alpha type male, that's fine. But to truly be alpha, you have to improve. You know what I mean? Like you have to be a Marcus Aurelius. You have to be somebody that's like accepting of like, yeah, I'm good and I'm tough, but I can always be better and tougher. And if that means I have to go in and learn from a 150-pound, 22-year-old that's a purple belt that whoops my ass every day, so be it. You know what I mean? I'll be grateful for that fight, and I'm going to get good. So from that, I think it's a culture standpoint. And dude, what you said about like men not being hit in the face anymore, like that's exactly the same thing that I've seen here in our last class. So I was like a stand-in. I was in a temporary academy spot for our last academy. And the biggest takeaway that I got from that was the horrendous shape of adult men in this country, where it was physically disgusting. Just how poorly conditioned, how they've being in a fight is one thing, but like the population that we had come in as, would be police officers, and a lot of them got washed out, but you could tell like their fighting stance was legitimately like, take your fighting stance. They probably would look around for an Xbox controller. You know what I mean? Like that's the only fight they've ever been in. That's the only workout they've ever done is playing video games and sitting around and like imagining what being a cop looks like. And it's like, man, what is going on here? And how do we change that from like a bigger culture standpoint? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's mind blowing to me. With the last recruit class we had in. So I don't know how things work in your state, but we're a civil service here. So you have to take a test, and you get then you get a number, and then they pick your number, and you got to go through a whole process of being hired. And that process is physical, medical, psychological, and all that. So out of 100 people who go for the physical agility, only 10 will pass the three things. And if I told you what the Cooper Standards test was, your mind would be blown. It's just sit-ups, push-ups, and a mile and a half run.
Yep.
And
Same
like
thing we do.
the mile and a half run for like a 20-year-old guy is like 11 minutes and 50 seconds. And it's like they can't do it. They can't even do 20 push-ups. Like, even during the academy, we had recruits that were in here that couldn't even pass the minimum standards. Like, so you took the standard to get in, and somewhere within that 6 to 7 month period, you lost that standard, and now you can't do it.
Yeah.
And then I'm also blessed that I get to work with college interns. We have a college internship program, so I work with college kids, and I kind of prep them if they want to get into law enforcement, what's expected, and I run them through the PT test. Out of, I think we had 29 interns take it, 7 passed everything out of the 29. And these are college kids.
Yeah.
And I'm blunt. I'm like, listen, you got to get out of your mom and dad's basement. You got to get off the couch. You got to start doing active stuff. At least if you want to be in police work, at least work on your push-ups, your sit-ups, and that stuff. I'm not telling you to go out and be like Mr. Olympia, but God, you're someone's 911. Someone's calling you for help and you can't even do a push-up. We got a problem. And then not for nothing, if you or I call for help, that's our backup. So it's kind of like, so I'm a big person where I always tell everybody, you're taking a job where you choose that, or you give up that inherent right to be unfit. And everyone's like, well, not everybody can be bodybuilders. I'm like, yeah, I'm not a bodybuilder, but I can go out and I can run. I can go out and do my push-ups. I can go out and do my sit-ups. I'm like, it is what it is, but I'm almost 50. I'll be 48 in November, and I still pass the PT standard as if I'm a 20 to 29-year-old. So I'm like, what's your excuse? There is none.
Yeah, and it's really defining and understanding what it means to be a tactical athlete. And when you work in a tactical field, which police work, fire, military, those things are all tactical, right? Defining what it means to be a tactical athlete. And that's something that I always ask when I give my little wellness block to the recruits is how many people in here consider themselves to be an athlete? That's one of the first questions I ask. And it's usually, the last, I think 3 or 4 classes I've given this little talk, and it's usually like, in a class of 20 to 30, it's usually like 3 or 4 will raise their hand, and I'll ask them why. And then they say, well, I played sports in college. Typically they're college athletes that came into law enforcement. And the ones that don't, I ask why. And they say, well, I've never done any of those things. And it's really trying to rework this mindset of what it means to be a tactical athlete and what it means to be an athlete in general. Cool. All right. Did you hear any of that?
Yeah, I got a lot of it. I just lost like the last second or two.
Okay. Yeah. So like
you were talking about the wellness and going into the class and the athlete and college athletes.
Yeah. So basically, like, what does it mean to be a tactical athlete, and why do you see yourself as an athlete or not? And it's really reworking that narrative as to, if you're on this job, you're an athlete. You know what I mean? And you have to train athletically. Now, again, that doesn't mean anything or that does mean exactly what you said. Like, you don't have to be Mr. Olympia bodybuilder. You don't have to be a CrossFit Games athlete. You don't have to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu, but you got to be athletic, and you have to know how to apply the fitness and wellness and strength and all those components for you to be a better tactical athlete every single day. And then that carries over to shooting, to combatives, to longevity on the job, longevity after the job, like all those things that are all interconnected.
And the biggest thing that it really runs into it, and this is just me speaking for my perspective on things. Like I've trained, weight training. I've done natural fire police, bodybuilding shows. So I've done that. I just really fell in love with jiu-jitsu. So right now I just do my girlfriend, my better half, she is a personal trainer, fitness thing. And she actually just started her journey in jiu-jitsu. So she's a white belt, 1 stripe now. I keep on telling her to take the stripe away from her if she disrespects me again, but she laughs at me. But like, just from like doing the workouts that she's been putting me through, I don't think I've lifted a weight over 20 pounds, and I can't tell you how long, but like I lift up that 20-pound weight and I don't put it down for like 10 minutes. And it feels like 100 pounds by the time I'm done doing everything that she puts me through. But like everything I do with the jiu-jitsu, I really feel that it helps me when I'm dealing with people in public. I feel like it's helped me throughout my whole career. 22 years on, and I've only got called out to internal affairs 2 times. And both those times that I was called out, it was because they didn't like the way I spoke to them. It was nothing physical. It was they didn't like the way I spoke to them. So I believe that by working out, by keeping that healthy mindset, by being physically, mentally, and then also have a real skill set to use if I needed to, I look at things a lot differently, and I was out with my girlfriend, and a certain individual was getting a little out of hand, and she just said, she goes, "I don't know how you remain so calm. I would have." I go, "I don't know. It's just I'm used to this. It's just you get used to it." And I really say it's because of everything that I've done. It's not just one thing; it's everything. And then add in on training and life experiences and all that, and that makes who you are. But I really feel like if we had more people in our line of work who worked out, took care of themselves mentally, physically, and they all have excuses. Oh, I can't afford it. I don't know how it is by you, but everybody I work with here has like $100,000 car, but they can't afford to go to the gym.
Right.
It's like, come on, dude. Well, I can't afford it. Yeah, but you go out to the bars, every weekend with the boys, and you're spending $300, $400 at a bar. What about investing in yourself a little bit? And I don't know. I get frustrated a lot with it because I just want to see people get home. That's all that matters to me, and I want people to be safe. And I want people to live past their career because like the guy that gave me the advice to start training, he died at 52 years old.
Yeah.
That's we have our life expectancy is low. So if we can beat that by just staying healthy, by doing the right thing, it helps all along. And like you said, then it gives you that true officer presence. How we always preach officer presence, the clean uniform, this. Once you have that clean press uniform plus everything you add to it, you definitely have that uniform presence when you walk in and people are like, I'm not going to fuck with this guy because he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. If you look like, you have the capacity to whoop somebody's ass. Like if they try something, they're probably not going to try something like
Right.
that's just human psychology. Like they're going to, posture, like all those things matter. And if I feel like I'm going to lose a fight, if I try to fight you, I'm probably not going to fight you. I'm going to figure out a different way, and,
Yep.
and with our line of work, that other way is usually compliance,
Right.
So really what I'm hearing you say is overall, like you have to be professional, and being a consummate professional in today's environment is absolutely imperative because like, especially where you're at out East, like it's crazy. If you are even looked at as being excessive, hell, you could be arrested, right?
Yeah.
So
And this is the thing and the people who are making those laws have no idea about what is not. Now, where we are out in Suffolk County on Long Island, we're like on the furthest east part of Long Island. We don't have the issues that the NYPD is having. The NYPD, they get governed by New York City Council. So that's their legislators or whatever, their lawmakers in the city. And that's who governs their rules. And one of their things just got overturned, which is a good thing, where they said you can't go anywhere near the diaphragm, which meant the entire torso,
right.
which you can't control somebody just by the arms and the legs. It's physically impossible. But you have people who are implementing these rules, that have no idea because number one, they've probably never been in a fight in their life. They never once tried to, get somebody to comply who's resisting, or who is resisting and under the influence of something where they get that superhuman strength. And now you just want them to hold their arms. And like the latest thing is like I train a couple of guys that work in New York City corrections at Rikers. Guys telling me they're forcing them to work for 24 hours. So could you imagine the mindset you would have if you have to work 24 hours straight, and on your 22nd hour you have to make that split-second decision on how to react in the use of force thing? It's not going to happen.
Well,
And then the boot, and then their deputy commissioner is now a former inmate who used to be inside the jail as an inmate. That's their deputy commissioner who's putting policy in place that the officers now have to adhere to. And this guy, from what I hear, wasn't like in for like a driving under the influence or failure to pay child support. From what I heard, he was an inmate because he had a pretty hefty record. But what does that do for you as a morale? It's insane. And that's why as I was doing this, I always felt like our use of force is this is what we have to do. And then I met Officer Elfatirian, and she started doing the officer wellness thing. And then I realized how important that the officer wellness part is, because you can have all the training you want, but if you don't take care of yourself, it doesn't matter how good you are at this. You're still going to have those emotional breakdowns. And then we have to remember we're human beings, so we have things going on in our lives. Maybe I have somebody who's fighting stage 4 cancer right now, and I just got off the phone with them, and they're just putting him into what's that called, assisted living, to where they're going out to pasture at this point. And now you got to go to a high level call. How do you think that person is going to respond to that? They're going to be dealing with a lot of emotions. So one thing that our agency is really, really pushing is officer wellness, and making sure that the officers have everything they need in place to stay healthy, and anything that they need. And they have a lot of clubs now, like hockey, lacrosse. So it's a good thing. They got a CrossFit club out here now. They got a lot of good stuff going on for us that's focused on the officer first, to make sure that they're doing the right things for themselves.
Yeah. And that's something I don't think, when people talk about like, well, we need more training, we need more of this. And it's like, well, sometimes the issues are really, how do you balance all these, I was never in the military, but I basically consider every shift to be like a mini deployment. You know what I mean? Because you got to like have your little workup that you do before you go on shift, and you have your deployment where you work, and then you got to come back to real life. After that, you got to like be able to work yourself back down and back into like a normal society. And if you have more things going on that are stressing you, from finances to relationships to people dying, like that, you can compartmentalize all you want, but it does take a toll. And I'd be lying if I said that, oh, I've never had an issue where I had to tell my sergeant, like, hey, I need a break. I like, can I get somebody to cover my runs for 20, 30 minutes, like, while I compose myself and got my shit back together, So if you got shit going on, you have to know how to like manage that as well, and how to put it all together so that you can be effective and professional in the street, and seemingly not have it, and not seemingly, but not have it affect your decision making, because it can't. And that's difficult.
It's funny because like I used to get a lot of heat over because I share some videos. I don't share too many of them, but I do share some of the ones that go viral, about police, how bad they look and this and that. And I get messages all the time like, how can you show that? It makes us look bad. I go, well, listen, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't go searching for these things. I don't go on YouTube and go down these rabbit holes and find videos that were only looked at once. By the time I get them, they probably have like 1 million+ views on them. So I try to look at it as a training perspective, and I try to spin it to be like, well, listen, we're kind of doing them a disservice if we don't look at this video and learn from it, because we have to learn from every video. Even if it's a perfect video, there's still stuff that we can learn from. So it's starting to take a turn where people are actually starting to look at the videos for training, because there's a lot of now other people out there that are pushing, hey, let's show these videos, not to make somebody look bad, but to say, hey, this is what we got to fix. Because that's what boxers do, right? They watch tape. That's what professional football players do. NBA stars, they watch tape, and that's how they become better. So this is like one of the things that we try to evolve on that. But it all comes back to you as a human being. Like, what are you dealing with that day? And can you do your job the correct way? Because all these videos that you see, I guarantee you, I would probably say, and it's not having statistics, but I would probably say like 90% of them are emotionally based reactions. And not that it's bad, but listen, I'm not saying if you get punched, you shouldn't do something, because I'm going to be honest, if somebody punches me, I'm going to do something. But you can't get punched and then just start punching somebody back nonstop. That's not going to be good on the video. But you have to know how to react to those things, and because in the line of work, that's what's going to happen. They're going to hit you when they're handcuffed. With us, once you're in handcuffs, you can't hit them. But there are all ways of gaining compliance when they are cuffed, and you just got to train them to know them. But these are the things that you have to look at, and especially when it comes to that, because most of them are that emotionally based, or, we have a guy going around right now that just goes out and incites people, these constitutionalists that, oh, the law, I know. They just try to bait you in to get your reaction. You have to learn to not bait into that stuff and just stay professional, do your job, and then everything else hopefully falls into place.
Yeah, it's again, professionalism, and how do you keep that sympathetic parasympathetic shift? How do you keep that in balance? Because if you get, it's different between, like you said, getting punched in the face and then responding and reacting from a professional standpoint. Like, you're going to shift sympathetic, you're going to go into fight or flight, you're going to deal with the fight, and then as soon as the handcuffs on, you have to be able to downshift back. And
Patch it back down and go
yeah,
back to professionalism. And this is the one thing we talk with, like the Eric Garner case. If you look at the Eric Garner case, I don't think there was anything wrong with that case as far as the takedown, the handcuffing, and this and that. There really was no issue in that. The police got called there for a Lucy cigarette, and unfortunately, it turned into a tragic event. I know Eric Garner had a history, and everybody says, "Oh, he's a perp." Listen, I'm just going to look at it for the one isn't. The guy's a human being, number one. So let's look at it that way. He didn't comply, so he does have to take some accountability for not complying. They took him down. They used the technique they were taught. But the thing that really made that look bad was everybody just standing around doing nothing. So when we teach in the academy now, we show that video, and not to get this political thing up, because there's not anything to be political. I always tell everybody, when you have a human being laying down on the ground and they're not moving, what should you do? And they're like, I don't know, just talking. No, well, what do you learn in CPR? That class that nobody wants to take, that we have to take biannually, and everybody comes in and says, "Oh, just let me sign the paper and get out of here. Just click and go. Let me have my 3-hour lunch." I go, but if they would have just did what they were taught in CPR, tap the guy in the shoulder. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" No response. What's the next thing you do? Chest sternum rub. Okay, still no response. Well, then you better start doing CPR. But what the world saw was everybody just standing around while some guy was laying on the ground, and the news person saying, "And no, he's not breathing." How does that guy know? He's in the studio 1,000 miles away. But the perception was that these people weren't doing what they were trained to do. And I think if they would have done that instead of waving at a camera, it might have been a different outlook on that. The world looked at it as like the NYPD didn't care about the guy. He was a perp and they let him die there. I don't think that was the case, but it's the perception. There was another case in the Pink Houses in Brooklyn where an officer accidentally shot a young male who was downstairs. It was a negligent discharge. I never call it accident. It's a negligent discharge. He had his finger on the trigger, pushes through the door was stuck. He sent the round down range accidentally, negligently, and it ricocheted and hit the kid in the chest. The kid ran down a flight of stairs. The cops got jammed up because the cop didn't do CPR on him. And when he was on the stand, they said, "Why didn't you do CPR?" And they're like, "Well, she was doing it much better than I ever could have." And this was like a regular civilian. And they're like, "Wait a second." And he's like, "Yeah, I wasn't trained." So what do? They go to the academy and they pull all the CPR instructors. "Do you train this? Do you do this? Do you do this?" So, and that's what we talk about. It comes down to that professionalism, just know your basic, if you know those basics, that covers a lot of your stuff. So a lot of times now when we're teaching, once the handcuffs are on, first thing right away, do you need medical? How do you feel? If you think they need medical, call, get them to medical as quickly as possible. If they're not breathing, do your CPR sit through, tap them on the shoulder, chest sternum rub. If they're not breathing, check for pulse, check for that. Because if that's all seen on video, you're being a professional. No one can ever say anything to you. And that's what we're pushing right now. And that's what I tell everybody. They're like, "Oh, they'll tell me, 'Oh, you're a buff.'" I'm like, "Oh, I'm a buff. Go out to my car. Are there any stickers on my car besides my Monster sticker from the gym I train at? It says Monster Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu." I said, "Are there any Punisher logos on my car?
yeah.
Are there any, I'm the fucking wolf, you're the sheep. Is there any of that on my car?" No, but if I need to do my job, I can do my job. If that's what makes me a buff, then I guess I'm a buff. I like to just think that I'm professional. And if I have to do something, hopefully, I'll be able to take care of whatever, I have to. And that's just because I take interest. It's my job. It's like any job. You have to take a little interest in your job and, be ready for certain things.
Yeah, and as things change, we have to be able to adapt to it. And it was, even when I came on, the medical aspect of police work was not near as much as it is now. But really, when you look at it, as soon as those handcuffs are on, that person is our responsibility. So we should be providing those things from a moral standpoint. Like, this person is in your custody. You are responsible for them. As much as you can do for them, you need to do it. And that's just the right thing to do. Now, going back to those incidences that you were talking about, like when I watched Eric Garner, I saw an in custody death. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I saw. I didn't see any maybe you could talk about misapplication of force, but I didn't see any excessive. I didn't see anything.
No, I think they taught the seatbelt. It was a perfect thing. He went across the neck for a split second as they were falling to the ground. But yeah, it was just there's a lot of other things that were added to that, as far as his medical condition.
Right. So, how do we respond to an in custody death, and what should we do, and how should we he's in our custody until medics get there? Like, what should we be doing with somebody that looks like, oh shit, this could be an in custody death? Because like that's going to happen, and there's no avoiding in custody deaths. Those are going to happen from time to time based on people's
Yep.
medical and reactions and all those different variables that we don't have control over as cops. But what you also mentioned a little bit further back was like watching tape, calling cops out when they need to be called out. And like when you said that dude kicked the door, and again, I don't know the guy or anything, but when I just hear that, like you kick a door with your gun out, like that's stupid. You know what I mean? So you need to be like, then you should not be doing two things like that at once. Plus your fingers on the trigger and you crank the round off. Like that is beyond negligent.
Yeah, that was that. See, the thing in the city, their standard operating procedures when they're doing vertical patrol, going up and down the whole, the stairs and projects and all that.
Yeah.
It's so bad that they're told to have their guns out, and that's how they were doing vertical patrol. And what happened is he went to open the door to go into the staircase that goes up and down throughout the stairs there. The door was a little bit jammed, so he kind of nudged it with his shoulder to kind of get into the stairwell. And as he did that, that's when his finger was inside the trigger guard, and you had your negligent discharge. So their standard operating procedure at that time was guns drawn during vertical patrol due to safety. That's how bad it is in those project areas at times. So he did have the gun out the right time and everything was a trigger on inside the trigger guard. That's another thing. And all the firearms, they called out the firearms instructors, during the trial, because I read the trial transcripts, and they said, do you teach them, where are the fingers, outside the trigger guard, and this and that. That's just them dotting their I's and crossing their T's and saying, hey, you were taught not to have your finger there. Why was it there? But he really got hamstringed because of he didn't do CPR. If he would have done CPR, he probably wouldn't have lost his job, and he probably wouldn't have had any issues. It was just because he didn't do CPR on him.
Now, from a tactical standpoint, I hear that and I'm like, all right, well, then somebody should have a long gun. In like, if it's that bad that you want guns out, then shit, I'd rather have somebody with a rifle. That way you can manipulate that and move it and then get back up or provide different cover and different stuff like that. So, I mean, again, it's just what's the most professional way we can do this job. And that translates and permeates to everything, from firearms to whatever. But let me ask you this. Let's go back to training a little bit. I know we talked about, the sorry state of men in this country and that kind of stuff, but let's talk about the difference between like training men and training women, training males, like male recruits and officers and female recruits and officers. How do you approach that from a combatives or DT or jiu-jitsu standpoint?
Well, I treat everybody the same, no matter what. When you come in through this door here, I don't care if you're male or female or what. Nowadays, I don't care what you identify as. It doesn't matter to me. When you come in here, you're a recruit. So you could say you want to be called this or this. To me, you're a recruit, and I'm going to treat you the same. And I expect the same out of a female as I do a male. And now the output from a male might be better than a female, but all I really expect them to do is give 100% and learn as much as they can. It's just working with people who want to be sponges compared to people who know it all already. And that's really the difference. And I just feel like females just in general are more open to learn things because there's no ego. They come in, they're like, yep, I don't know how to fight. And everyone's like, okay, we're good with that. Whereas if a male comes in and says, I don't know how to fight, we look down and I'm like, oh, this guy's like a little wimp or, a little pussy. He can't fight. He's never been in a fight. So that's why men come in here and do this. But usually when I get ready for DT, I'll sit them down like, does anybody have any, martial arts backgrounds or any combatives backgrounds and this and that? And every once in a while you get one or two, say, yep, I do. And I ask them what it is. And I go, okay, well, I hope you're telling me the truth now, because when we get downstairs on the mat doesn't lie. Because you tell me this up here, but once we're down there, we're going to know right away. And that's when the truth starts to come out. And, and then when people start to see, okay, I really don't know what I'm doing. And I don't belittle anybody. So I always say, hey, listen, if you're never in a fight, it's okay. And I just put it as like, if you've never been in a fight, maybe you're a better communicator than I am. Maybe I can learn that from you, how to be a better communicator, because I've been in a lot of fights. Maybe I need to learn how to communicate like you. So I try to just make everybody feel like, okay, I might be better at this, but you're better at this. Let's get better together so we're all on the same page. But, just definitely the females, I don't know, it's probably for them too. They need to prove a point. So like when they're training, they usually put like, you know how it goes. Like you'll see in the gym, you teach a move, guys will rep it out 3 times and they're experts at it. But if you look over at a female training, they'll rep it 1,000 times and they'll be like, and they'll ask questions. And that just comes down to the ego thing. But I treat everybody the same. And when I put that red man suit on, male or female, if I get on top of you, I'm going to be on top of you the same way. I alter the weight a little bit because I don't want to crush them, but I let them understand what it feels like and how it is. But it's I to me, it's a recruit. There's no male, there's no female. You're a recruit, and I need you to get home because you might face that 220-pound guy. It's not always going to be that small girl that you face as a female officer.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at is maybe not the gender difference, but the size. Let's talk about so the tactics
Yeah.
and the game plan that because most female recruits are smaller than most male recruits on average. I would say that's a fair thing to say,
Fact. Yep.
regardless of what you identify as, right? So
Yeah,
now
regardless of what science says or doesn't says, yes.
let's just talk about the physics, right? So mass versus mass. How do you if you're 120 pounds versus 220 pounds? How does that change your game plan? How does that change the way you do things?
Well, usually when I'm teaching people anything with defense, I always tell them stay where you feel comfortable. So what I'll do is I'll pick a smaller person and I'll pick a large person. I'm like, I want to know where you feel safe, as you get closer to me or away from me. And then we figure out why. And then I say, now, if you're in this situation as let's say 125-pound female and you're facing a 225-pound male, is it okay if you go to a taser right away? Is it okay if you go to this right away? Because maybe you want to have that space because it is a much larger person. Whereas me or somebody who has a skill set, let's say I'm dealing with a 230-pound male who has a skill set, I'd be like, no, now you can close the space. You can, get in there. So I kind of go in the same concept as I do jiu-jitsu. Is everyone says in jiu-jitsu, oh, space is bad. And that's not true. Space is good. You have to learn how to manage that space. So just like in the law enforcement worlds, we need to know how to manage that space. Because if I walk up to a guy and I see his ears are all cauliflowered, I know this guy's a wrestler. So if I don't feel comfortable being wrestling, I want to stay outside of his wrestling range, out of those shot ranges. But if I walk up to a guy who has his nose broken and it looks like it's mashed in his face, I know he's pretty good at his feet, and then depending on their stances, if they get into that Muay Thai stance, now I don't want to get too close. So what I always try to tell them is you have to stay where you feel comfortable. So for the smaller ones, we teach them the positions. You never want to be on the railroad tracks or at 12 o'clock. Always have your 45s. That's how you're going to win fights and create the space. And then we teach the novice, the officers who know nothing as far as grappling or anything, create that space because space is your friend. Because when you have space in between you, they can't hit you, they can't punch you, they can't get to your weapon systems, and then know how to defend all that if that space is closed. So it's kind of, I try to work it that way with them so that they start to feel comfortable. And then I always just instill in them, you got to continue your training when you're done. You got to continue your training when you're done. And that's the only way to get better. But one female we had, she was a very high level grappler, and she felt very comfortable going inside. I'm not going to tell her not to because that's where she feels comfortable. But I always try to tell you, you have to worry about that because now you have a 225-pound man who might get on top of you, now has access to your weapons because we bring weapons to every fight. So you have to be aware of that as well. So it's really on the individual, but New York and the way we teach things here, it's create space, disengage. They're big on tool dependency because it's a cheaper way to train. I'm not a tool dependent person. I think they're ridiculous because tools fail all the time.
All the time.
Look at tasers. You go onto the taser website, they'll say it's got like a 90% plus effective rate.
No way.
But then no, the LAPD just did the LAPD just did a study on it. They said it's less than 50%.
Yeah.
It's like if I want to buy an Audi, am I going to go to Audi for a review on their car? No, they're going to tell me it's the best car ever. So it's like you pull that taser out. There's so many times the probes don't hit. The clothing doesn't get through. It's it's not effective. Or the best thing is when they hit it and they just stand back and they watch it. Whereas that 5 seconds, they're supposed to be going hands on when they're in that lockout. But all the time you'll see them, they're standing there waiting for it to end. It's like, no, that's when you go. That's when you get the control. And that's why I feel like tools fail, because the tool might work, but then the operator fails by not doing their job when they're supposed to. So, but New York, we're a very tool dependent, trained entity just because of the fact that it's cheaper. They come in for that one-time thing, a one-time refresher, and then they're done. And when they come in for their refresher, no chance of injury. So we push tool dependency.
That's such an error. That's such an error. So again, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking like, all right, so it's really making sure that the applications of the tactics and the tools are right. It's not just, and that's where this training that you're talking about, like being tool dependent, is really just
Yeah.
no application. Like, can you load a taser and pull a trigger and just watch the probes hit and shut it off? Can you do that? Yes or no? Okay, good. You're certified. Like, that's nonsense. There's zero application with that. So now, just because I can use this doesn't mean that I know how to apply it in the context of the what, quote, the totality of the circumstances, right? And how do I actually end this engagement? And really, it, like, just doing that, like, you're setting your officer up for either the 5-second ride. Let's say it does work, great. Now he's off the ride and then he's back at the fight, right? Or the other thing would be that you're just going to hold the trigger down and then give them continual, cycles of
one after another,
which is totally inappropriate too. And not know what to do. So how do you use the tools and the training and the tactics and actually apply it in context? And it's just mind-boggling that we don't do more. I mean, it's not mind-boggling. I get it. Like, it should be more scenario driven. Everything scenario driven. Like, you do the taser, here's how you use it, and then you go and you do 3 scenarios. But people don't want to do it because they are lazy. They got stuff they want to do. That the admins,
you got to go hands on. You got to go hands on, and now we're going to really see what you can do. Yeah,
and then admins worried about injuries and HODs and whatever, right? All these things that
we call it Dr. Summeroff. Because they come in, they do like one little PT thing, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I hurt my knee, and now they're off for the summer. That's another reason why we can't. But to go back to when I went to that training in Connecticut, I like to think that I'm pretty proficient in what I do. Am I perfect? Absolutely not. But it's funny. I was doing a scenario, and because we ran through live scenarios through this officer survival course, and I got to watch one of the videos. Oh, actually, I didn't watch a video, but the instructors there were definitely knowledgeable and definitely great skill sets. They gave the after action report, and he actually said to me, he goes, how come you didn't do this? Or how come you didn't say this? And I'm like, I didn't say that. He's like, no. And meanwhile, here at the academy, I instruct on when you're doing certain things to say certain things. But now when I'm in that real life scenario, like, I found myself not saying. So now that's what I'm saying. That's what we learn. So now I get the proficiency of learning, like, okay, even when I was under stress, yeah, I performed the way I was supposed to perform, but there were certain things that I should have been saying the whole time that I wasn't saying. And then he did turn around. He goes, but you were calm the whole time. He goes, the whole time you were fighting with this guy, your voice was very calm. You were in control. But why didn't you say this? Or why? And it's like, those are the little things that you tweak. And I was like, no, you're right. I didn't even realize it. And then when I went to handcuff the one guy, I put my knee on his on the nape of the back of his shoulder, sort of like the George Floyd thing. Yeah. And he goes, why did you do that? He goes, we don't do that. And I'm like, I don't know, to be honest with you. I go, it's just that's the way I've done it for a long time, but I know this is the way I have to do it. But it's like, now I choke people all the time, and I've been choking people for 20 years, and now we can't use the choke here. So I have to now learn how not to do that. So it's like the same principle. And that's why those scenario-based training things are so good. That you hit it right on with that. It should be scenario-based training out the wazoo to really put the stress on the person so that we see how they react under that, the real stress.
Yeah. And then if you can take it another step up, I would say, just like, when I played college football, we recorded every single practice. We watched every single practice, and we watched every single game like a million times in a row. So if you can do that, then you can even make your officers even better, where you review it, you show it to them. And then while there's that downtime between people, you're not just sitting around with your thumb up your ass. You can actually like be reviewing your last rep. And then next time you go in, you do it better. And there's just a lot of things that we could apply and make more realistic and train you for situations, not just choreographed, nonsense.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, that the thing they used to teach in the academy, where you press behind the ear, where you come out, those pressure points underneath the nose. I always tell you, like, look, I'm going to show you these just because we have to show you them because it's part of the curriculum. I'm like, but they're truly ineffective. They're like, what do you mean? I go, because you're going to come in here and you're going to do it on another recruit. And the minute I go to another recruit's ear like this, before I even press, they're going to be like, ah. So it kind of gives them this false sense of security that their thumb is like this invincible thumb. And whoever they touch is going to make them go crippled like that. And the reality is it doesn't really work that way. So it's like I'm very like I don't like teaching that stuff, but we show it to them because there are applications for it. Sometimes when you have multiple officers, you can use it. You know, when the guy is down and you're just trying to get arms out, then it's applicable at that time. But it's like same with the tools. You give them these tools and you train them on them and you give them this full sense of security, this false like I got this, I put this shiny thing on my chest, and you know what? I'm the man. Unfortunately, that's not the way it is. And I believe if we give them a real skill set, and I tell everybody, you give me somebody for a year of training, I will make them so confident in themselves, and they'll be like a white belt, maybe 2 or 3 stripes. But even at that level, you build this confidence that you now are starting to learn how to control a human being, that you'll build this confidence that all of a sudden these tools start to disappear. And that shiny thing on your chest anymore is just that. It's just a shiny thing on your chest. It's not this super magical thing that gives you power. It's because now you have that real skill set. It's you that delivers it. And I think if we could couple that all together, it would be great. There's a couple of places. Mariana down in Georgia, I think, is doing BJJ mandatory, where they actually issue them gis in the academy. And for 6 straight months, they have to hour every day. So there is culture change going with that. My thing is this: Eric Garner was $5.9 million. George Floyd was $20 million, I believe. Before anything even was out with the trial, they settled out with him. My thing is this: if you give me $5.9 million to train people appropriately and give them a real skill set, you would get rid of those lawsuits. You would get rid of those excessive force cases, in my opinion. You'll still have them, but it'll be a lot lower, in my opinion. But it's the sale to the people that run it. That's the hard part.
Yeah, well, and that just reminds me of the adage, like, ineffective force looks like excessive force, and it might not even be excessive. But if you punch somebody in the face with a bunch of little tiny punches and you do it 37 times, like, you created no damage, but it looks like, what the hell is that guy doing, and why is he punching that person so many times? Like, the first 10 didn't work. What do you think the next 20 are going to do something different? Like, you got to be able to know how to be effective with your force.
Yeah, there was a huge case, and everybody knows about it because it was the first I gotcha case. Remember Rodney King?
Yeah.
How he was beat with the PR-24? Well, after George Floyd, our administration said, listen, we want you to pull some prior cases and we want you to do it within service, show them things that they can and can't do. So that was one of the ones we pulled out. We were very careful because we know, like, oh, this could start like a big racial thing. And we're like, no, we got to use this one because it's a good one. But a lot of people don't know, right before Rodney King, they pulled chokeholds from the LAPD because too many people were dying from chokeholds, apparently. So they removed it. And then what did they replace the chokeholds with? The PR-24, the metal baton.
Right.
And when you look at their use of force policy, the officers followed their use of force policy to a T, because it said when you strike them with the PR-24, you strike them until you gain the compliance that you want. And so that's what they did. They would strike Rodney King and they wouldn't get the compliance. Why? Because they'd strike him, and like you or I, if I hit you with a baton, what are you probably going to do? You'll probably cover up, move, because it hurts.
Right.
And that's what he was doing. But when you look on the video, it looks like he's not complying. Like even the head kicks, that's all in their use of force policy. So they actually follow their use of force. But you hit the nail right on the head. After how many strikes with a baton do you say, okay, this is ineffective, I got to change to something else? Yeah. And that was the issue. I think they hit him 54 times. And you listen, if you hit somebody 4 or 5 times and you're not getting a response you need, it's time we got to figure out what to do here because it's not working. And then they even asked if it was a racial thing. Rodney King said it wasn't. Rodney King said there was not one racial epithet thrown through that entire thing. So it was just, even back then, the Rodney King, when first I got you on camera, shows you ineffective training, ineffective, the use of force that they used, what they were trained to use, that was the issue. It wasn't anything other than that. And here we are, how many years later, with the same dilemma. So when do we change it? How do we change it? We have to have a huge culture change.
And the kind of, like we just talked about it, the consistent thread that I see with that is misapplication. It's not that the PR-24 is a bad tool, but they didn't use it and they didn't apply it in a way that was good. They did it wrong. They did it fucked up.
Right.
So it's,
because after 54 shots, it's like, come on, dude. It's like, there's bigger issues, and that was it. And then of course, after they got off, the smug look that they gave the cameras, the perception the LAPD can do whatever they want, which is also the other thing, because that's what we have to remember, and we instruct here in the academy too. I always try to tell people, don't wear anything political on your uniforms. Don't wear the blue line on your uniform. I love the blue line. I believe in the blue line. I know what the blue line stands for, but the perception is the blue line is a racist symbol. So if you're going into a call and somebody believes that that blue line is a racist symbol, you now have a barrier. They're not going to want to talk to you because they're going to see you as what? The enemy right out of the gate. So we always try to tell them, try to remain neutral, try not to get involved in politics on the job, try to wear what the uniform tells you to wear so you don't get jammed up like that. And then hopefully, things will change. But I don't know, man. It's a weird world we live in nowadays.
That is an understatement.
Did you? I don't know. There's some. I don't watch. Like I watch it, but I don't know the guys' names. There's two guys that just grappled, and one guy said like two bad things to him, and the other guy's like, "Oh, he's a terrible human being. They should take his black belt away." And he's like, "Dude, I said two bad things to him." Like, this is the world we live in. I mean, God, could you imagine? Like, I've been called some pretty nasty things. I'm like, I don't take it personally. Here's a professional getting paid to grapple, and I'm like, you're upset because he said two things to you? I'm like, what kind of world do we live in? It's like,
he called you
I don't know.
Names, huh?
Yeah, I tell the guys, like, whenever I was dealing with someone, they say something like, dude, you better come up with something better than that. My ex-wife calls me a lot worse shit than that. And they start laughing. I'm like, no, really, dude, there's nothing you can really say to me that's going to bother me.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know where we got so soft in this world. Like, everybody's like this woke thing. Like, I don't even do the woke thing. Like, if you want to say you don't like cops and you don't want to train cops and this and that, I don't even care, man. I don't waste my time with you. I just unblock you. Goodbye. Good riddance to you. I'm not in this cancel culture thing. You do your thing. I'll do my thing. I don't know, man. This whole world is bizarro world right now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. There's so many things that we could talk about with that, but
yeah. And what's crazy is on September 12th, 2001, I went down into World Trade Center. And we were going down the West Side Highway, and I never before, like back then when we were younger, police were respected and it was a good thing. But that day, I'll never forget as long as I live. People were holding up signs, we love police, we love you, thank you, blah, 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 blah. It takes that event to get people to like the police when they do this every single day. It's not just that day, it's every single day. And it's like, when are we going to have this legitimacy? That's the last time police were considered legitimate, 9/11. It's like, and this is, and why? We're not doing anything different now than we did then. It's just this perception that's out there is ridiculous, and it's funny, when I'm out in uniform and I'm in a deli or something and a kid comes in with their mother and they're yelling and screaming, the mother will look at the kid and be like, oh, if you keep on going, I'm going to have him arrest you. Dude, that pisses me off, man, because I go to the kid, I kneel down, I'm like, come here, kid. I'm like, oh, I said, don't worry about it. I can't arrest you for doing that. That's your mom and dad. They got to take care of you. Don't worry about it. You can act like this. And the parents are like, what are you doing that for? I'm like, well, you're breeding fear. You're telling this kid that I'm going to, that's not right. You don't do that. I think that's, I don't know. It's this whole thing. It's disturbing, and hopefully the ship rights itself soon.
Yeah, I just, wonder, is it going to take another 9/11 event to swing the pendulum back the other way? I hope not. I would hate to see that many cops die, or that.
I thought we had COVID for a minute. I thought COVID, I thought we were going to bounce back. The damn nurses took that one. Damn them.
Well, if you look at the shift in marketing, the social media, the way that they specifically did not want that to swing, they did not want us to be part of that conversation. So it was frontline workers during COVID was not cops. It was medics, it was nurses, it's doctors, it was hospital staff, it's truckers, all true. Right. But they just kind of like, we started to get in the conversation and I was like, okay, cool. So like after COVID, I could see when people were like, businesses are shut down, people are losing their asses. Like they're like, holy crap, what's stable right now? What can I get a job at that is going to be needed during events like this? I figured like there's going to be an uptick in firefighters, medics, nurses, doctors, and cops. I thought for sure it was going to be like cop stuff is going to start going the other way now. And then all of a sudden, like overnight, it seemed like gone. We were just out of the conversation.
Out of the conversation. And the uptick went to like more kids in the basements not coming out, collecting checks for not working. It's bizarre, and listen, I have a lot of friends, different agencies all over the world, and it's funny because I just went to Buffalo and I trained, and another visiting police officer from Sacramento came. I think it was Sacramento or San Diego, but somewhere in California. And it's so crazy. Like even the stuff that's going on the West Coast is here on the East Coast. It's like everyone's like, "Oh, just leave New York and go somewhere else." It's everywhere. Like you have your select few places that are still very, pro law enforcement and all this, but it's everywhere, and it's just like I don't know. And it's like our job up here. You can't get people to take the test anymore. Like even our brother Suffolk PD, one of the highest paid in the nation, they can't even get people to take the test. It's insane.
Yeah, it's not about the money, I don't think. That's what, like, we look at here is like, well, our agency just needs to be paid more. It's like, well, that's going to help a little bit, but
Yeah.
I don't think that people are choosing this profession. I don't think that they ever have for the money. And granted, that needs to be part of the conversation because I think it could drastically change things, but it would have to be a drastic shift, not like a 5% increase. Like if you want more
Right.
cops, you need to be paying $200K a year minimum,
Yeah.
right? For like, because the average cop salary nationwide, I think I did a Google search a while back. It's like 28,000 a year is the
Yeah.
average police officer salary. That's insane for the amount of stuff that you want police to be responsible for. That's ridiculous. So now if you
Yep.
increase that to like 200K, then you can start getting more qualified people, but that's still not going to solve the issue entirely.
Yeah. No, because people don't want the job.
Right.
They turned us into villains, and it shouldn't be. And it's funny. I have like I said, I work with interns. I had an intern here today. He's processing for our job, and then I have an intern. So excited, man! I put the post on social media because I'm just so happy for the kid. But he got picked up by NYPD, and I get these side texts from people. Oh, dude, tell that kid not to take that job. I'm like, dude, this is what this kid always dreamt that he wanted to be. It's all he ever wanted. How can I tell him don't take that job? But what I am going to do is I'm going to say, take that job and make sure you're ready for the job. And he's been training with us for a while because after he was done with the internship, he started training with us. So he's a blue belt now. He's a stud, this kid. And he'll be fine because he has a good mindset. But it's like, right, even our own people like, don't tell him to take that job. I'm like, no, this is who we need to take this job. This kid's a good kid. He's going to do good. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's going to serve. And that's all he ever wanted to do. But it's like even the negativity amongst us is terrible, and I always just try to stay on the positive side of stuff. Try telling, your in-service that you're not allowed to choke people anymore. They're like, oh, this is bullshit. And I'm like, oh, I know, here we go. I know I'm the bearer of bad news, but this is the way it is. This is the rules of the game. This is what we have to do. We have to adapt, overcome, and figure out what we're going to do to become better. So I try to stay in that positive mindset. But man, I'll tell you, it's tough.
Yeah. Well, and there's ways you can stay positive without and be realistic, right? So like
Yeah.
when the public and laws and all, like they start taking tools away from us and tactics away from us, then that says to me the public doesn't want us to do or be involved in as much proactive stuff, right? Okay, fine. That's fine. There's consequences to everything from a societal standpoint. Now, I need to be able to modify how I do the job, right? Because I really like running dope, finding guns, and finding bad guys and putting them in jail. And that comes with fights and car chases and all kinds of stuff like that. Right. So right now, what I'm feeling from society and what I'm hearing is that society doesn't want me to do that stuff because they don't want to see the fallout. Like, okay, fine. Then that's going to come with a consequence. These drug dealers, these gang members, the shootings are going to go up. The violence is going to go up because I'm not out there and guys like me aren't out there pounding the pavement as much. That's okay. It makes my job a little easier. So now all I have to worry about is how do I continue to get a good eval, even though I'm not doing, 5 traffic stops a shift anymore, because I'm not going to do that. And until society tells me otherwise, like I'll shift back the other way, but I'm not going to do it until I hear from society. So we just, sometimes we're our own worst enemies with that. Like we have to be able to mold ourselves to what society wants in some ways.
Yeah, well, it's a risk versus reward. What are you going to do? What's the reward for you doing what you do? Right now, there's no reward. Here in New York, this Cuomo is like saying he doesn't understand why the shootings are going through the roof in the city and this and that. Yeah, I'll tell you why. You did bail reform. Pretty much you can commit a crime, pretty horrendous crimes in New York State and just go in front of a judge and he goes, okay, see you in court on this date, a month later. And like 2 weeks later, the person's doing something horrific again. There's your problems right there. But the sad part about this is is they disbanded specialized units in the city. And who disbands it? The people who don't need it. So the people who live in those communities that need those specialized units, they're like, no, we want these units. But then you have these privileged individuals who don't need those units because they live in more affluential neighborhoods. They're like, no, they don't need it. That's over policing. That's wrong, and this and that. And they're like, no, they do need it, and the people in that community do want it. And it's funny because Brentwood, Long Island, that's where our academy is here. There was a big thing, with the media wise across the nation. Donald Trump came out here to address the issues because we had the MS-13 murders. It was pretty national news because it was pretty horrific. And when I was working in that area, it's those people in that community. They love when they see us in there, and they want to see us in there. But who doesn't want us in there? The people who don't live in those communities or don't do those things, and those are the issues that you guys are dealing with there, which is it's terrible, man. It's I don't know. I don't go for that. I live in a blue collar neighborhood. I'm lucky. Pretty much. I was away for a week. Nothing got stolen out of my mailbox, so I'm pretty good. And I live in a regular blue collar neighborhood, very mixed community, which I love, but not everybody has that luxury. There are some people who live in bad communities that do need the police to want them there. And it's sad because there are very good people that live in those communities that rely on the police to help them, but yet they're being pulled out by people who, have no say in it. And that's the sad part, and one of the rewards for me is like during COVID, they shut down. I was part of the community relations unit. They shut our unit down totally. And then just like watching everything on the news and everything that was going on, I was like, I can't even watch the news anymore. I got rid of TV out of my house. I don't even watch the media anymore. Kind of just got rid of everything off my social media that had anything to do with COVID or anything to do with the media, politics. And I saw a drastic change in how I felt because I wasn't being swamped with this negativity. But then there were times like seeing what everybody was going through on the police side, all the officers that were being killed, nonsense, for no reason at all, other than that they wore a uniform. It would dishearten me. And I'm like, I can't wait to retire. I'm fucking done. Screw these people. Listen, I served my country so that we wouldn't have this shit, this third world stuff in our country. I serve my community because I don't want to see bad here. I'm done. Let these people deal with it. I'm just going to sit, protect my castle, and I'm good to go. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, teachers or like the principals or the people that I dealt with in schools would send me just hey, Officer Chris, we're just checking up on you. We want to make sure you're okay during this COVID. And that kind of put wind back in my sail, And like this kid, Matt, who just got into the NYPD, that kind of puts wind back in my sail that, okay, maybe we're not lost yet. But yeah, it's to the point where I'm like, I just want to pack up, retire, and just watch the shit show hit. It's I think they're saying like America's like an alcoholic right now. We got to hit rock bottom before we can get out. When's rock bottom coming? Because we need some good stuff again. And but that's the things that we have to change on our own. And we try to teach not being cynical. In our field of work, we become very cynical. Cynicism in law enforcement is a good thing because it keeps you safe, but it also is bad. Because when you tend to look at everything in that cynical eye, it's bad. So I'm even trying to get myself out of that. I know when I go to restaurants now, it's probably one of the hardest things I have to do, but I sit at the restaurant with my back to the door because usually I'm always like at the door, looking at the door, and I have to realize that's not healthy for me. So I kind of try to put myself in uncomfortable spots. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sit this way because I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that statistic, of this is how I become, cynical, where you're not trusting anybody and you're always that hyper vigilant. I want to be able to try to learn how to turn it off when you go home. So that's one of the things that I try to work on. I'll tell you, it's tough.
Yeah, that's very tough. So it brings up a whole nother conversation about constant hypervigilance and what that does over a 20 to 30 year career. That alone will cause PTSD. And then now if you go and add in all of the critical incidents that we go to, murders, deaths, shootings, hot runs, whatever, like that's going to just compound. So now you look at, suicide rates of cops. Our average life, like we talked about earlier, after retirement is 5 years and we're dead. Like all of those things factor in together. So now what you're saying about like, I'm purposefully putting myself in a position to basically do some therapy on yourself to put
Yeah.
yourself in a position that's going to create some anxiety. So you go through, you go to the restaurant, you sit with your back to the door, you come out, you didn't get shot in the head. Like nobody robbed you, nobody shot you, nobody
Nope.
hurt you. So now that's going to build in the confidence that like I don't need to have this hypervigilance all the time, right? All the time. Now, to me, I hear that and I'm like, well, that trick is just managing. Like, all right, is this a safe environment to do that or not? And how do you recognize that?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely tough, and it's hard to balance because I went out to dinner with a couple when we were away, and I was sitting down, and my back is to the bar, so everybody's behind me, so I'm already itchy a little bit, so I'm always turning my head, looking and this and that. And my girlfriend, she's like, I guess, taking it as if I'm looking at other people in the bar, and I'm like, not. I'm just like, this is what we do. We observe, we take information in, we're
Yeah.
reading body language, and you're doing this and that. And I'm kind of like always like I'm looking like, so if I see a little movement on the left, I'm turning my head. This is all that hypervigilance you're talking about,
Yep.
and you're not supposed to be. So when you're hypervigilant, you have there's three things that you do. You either fight, right, and you survive. You run, you flight, and there's the other thing that people never remember is you lock up, you freeze, because like if you see a snake, what do most people do? They're like, and they don't move. So that's part of your hypervigilance thing, and then you kind of take those small steps back. So for me, I just kind of, and like I said, I just talk out of my perspective. I feel like if I can start to control some of the things like that, it does kind of help me a little bit more. I usually never leave my house without my weapon. It's just whether it's a small 32 in my front pocket, or my my 9 millimeter. I usually always have a weapon on me, and it's not really because I want to get involved in stuff. It's just really for self preservation if something happens. But like even to the point, I'm like, if I'm going to Ace Hardware, do I really need to bring my gun with me? No, I'm just going from my car to Ace to back. There's probably no chance that anything's going to happen. But if I'm going to go into a mall, if I'm going to go to a movie theater, if I'm going to go to a crowded place, maybe I will carry it on me. So, like, there are times now that I will start to leave, my weapon behind, depending on where I'm going. Which, listen, I think if more good guys carried their guns all the time, we would have a lot less issues. But, so like I said, if I'm going to the grocery store, I'm probably just going to go shop in a minute, out an hour. Uh, Keep my back to the door. I'm trying to work on that. I'm also divorced, so I'm a statistic. Law enforcement world, right? Statistics. We get divorced. Yep, absolutely. Why do we get divorced, Bill? Because we get tired at home. My ex-wife didn't understand what I did. I had nobody to communicate at home with, like my job, things that I saw and did. So I would come home and I would just do me, and I found myself I became an addict, but thankfully it wasn't an addict on alcohol or an addict in drugs. It was an addict with jiu-jitsu. So I would just go to jiu-jitsu all the time. I hit the afternoon class, the night class. So I was finding myself time there. I'd work more overtime, and then I wasn't at home as much. And then we just, we separated, we disengaged from one another. So at a certain point, like, I can't live like this anymore. But after my divorce, just like I try to take steps in my regular life, I said, let me do a self-evaluation. I know that I did things that are wrong, but now in my new relationship, what do I have to do so I don't become a statistic in this relationship too? So that's why, I try to do the things I do now so I'm not that statistic, because I'm 48. I think they say we only live until like 53. So I'm pretty much,
Right. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to be on borrowed time soon. So it's like I'm trying to do everything I can to avoid all that. And this is some of the things that we try to preach to the people that we work with, and in service with our officer wellness, because we actually give a 16-hour officer wellness class in the academy. And we talked about financing and everything that puts into it. So it's been a big thing for me to try to like do that self-evaluation and take care of myself mentally. I was involved in a lot of stuff with post-traumatic stress disorder because we had a family friend who passed away to PTSD. Private First Class Joseph Dwyer. He was on the cover of newspapers across the world carrying an Iraqi boy in 2003 during the initial part of Iraq. And he came back and he suffered from PTSD. And then I started getting involved in it because, we lost him. And people say, oh, Joe committed suicide. And I'm like, no, he didn't. He died due to post-traumatic stress. And they're like, yeah, but he killed himself. No, he didn't. He died because of post-traumatic stress. And I'm like, because the officer that was there that responded to his house when he was dying, Joe said to him, I don't want to die. So that's not somebody who's suicidal. That's somebody, he was huffing to relieve some pain. And then that's what led to it, which some officers do. Officers get involved in alcohol, they get involved in drugs, then they lose their careers, and then now they don't feel like they have anything and whatnot. I want to make it to where that uniform doesn't identify who I am. It's just a part of who I am. And that's what we try to teach them. This, when I come in and work, that's just a part of who I am. There's more to me than just that uniform. And so getting to learn a lot about PTSD and a lot of the things that I dealt with that on that end really opened my eyes a lot to me to say, okay, I need to start doing this. And then of course, after, going away for a year on a military deployment, you come back and like, it's funny, my ex-wife was like, you don't stop at stop signs. I'm like, no, because we never stopped. You just drove and you drove, and like little things, like, you move out of the way of a pothole because, during the training, they say, don't drive through things that don't look familiar to you. And when you recognize that the problems you have and you try to correct them, I think that's how we get better. And that's why I don't know if this is going to help me by putting my back to the door. And shit, I might get shot in the back of the head. Who knows? But I feel like when I go there, I'm bettering myself, which hopefully, will then come in. And then I also married a special education teacher. So she kind of understands the element of people that we deal with, because her students, I hate to say this, but they're like on the same mindset of the perps that we deal with. And unfortunately, a lot of her students will come in contact with us, but it's a sad thing. But she actually understands more of what I go through, and I could actually go home and talk to her about things that I encounter, and she actually, nope, I get it. I understand it. So that's also a big thing too.
Yeah. So just to kind of like, I never go anywhere without my gun, right? That's so now. What I think you are talking about again is, I just want to make sure and clarify this, is you are specifically targeting very, very, very low risk areas to go.
Yes, and very limited.
In order to take control over your sympathetic nervous system. Like that is what you were doing here. It is not,
all I'm doing.
It's not that you're being like irresponsible. I just don't want people to listen to this and be like, oh, that motherfucker.
No.
Like,
listen, I went to Buffalo. Yeah. I took my Glock 26, my Glock 19. I took my AR-15. I had that all in my car. And, even my girlfriend's like, why do you bring all this? I'm like, because you never know.
Yeah.
If I'm on the road and the shit hits the fan, I'm not going to get caught with my pants down. So no,
right.
It's very like limit. Like if I'm in my shorts and I got to go to the pool store to get some chlorine for my pool, bang, I'm going to run up there real quick. I'm not going to, whereas before I would get my gun and go, like certain little things like that. No, I'm not going to, I try to do that. But no, 98% of the time, 95% of the time, I always have my gun on. It's a good friend of mine. He was an ESU cop in the city. He unfortunately passed away due to 9/11 bullshit, the air quality. He's the one that changed my mindset on that, because he's like, you have a gun on you? And I'm like, no, why? And he's like, why is it all the good guys never fucking carry the guns, but all the bad guys have their guns? And that always stuck with me. And from that day forward, I always carry my gun. Like I go into the city, I have it. Like I said, 95 to 96% of the time, I always have. Like I said, I was just in my own car going up to Buffalo, and I had my arsenal in my car with me, man. Because, like I said, when I'm away, I don't want to get caught with my pants down either. So, and that's more for self-preservation than actually trying to get involved in something. But that's stuff, because I'm not going to get stuck on the road and some guy tries, they block the highway and they start to crash into my car. I'm going to be ready to deal with that.
Yeah. And that's why I look at it from a standpoint of like, hey, doctors carry medical gear. This is my profession. Yeah. I'm good with this. I know that I can take care of problems if I need to, not seeking it out. But again, I like what you're doing, and I like the way that you are specifically targeting action items to reclaim your central nervous system, to reclaim your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. That's the actions. Now it's up to everybody to figure out how to do that in your own life, right? The application of those tools is the same as what we talk about with tactics and training and all that. But if we never figure out a way to like progressively like kind of come out of this mode of like, all right, I don't need to be a tactical mastermind 100% of the time, because you can't stay in condition red, you'll die. Right? You have to be able to come down. And even from a workout standpoint or jujitsu standpoint or CrossFit standpoint, like when do you go intense? You go intense, very short, very fast, very hard, and you come back down. Even inside of like, like a 5-minute like rolling session or a sparring session, like me as a white belt, like I'll go real hard. I'll try a move. I'll try a couple moves, maybe a series for about, 30, 40 seconds. And then I'll come back and I'll find position and I'll just
settle in.
Yeah. And then I'll go again. But because your sympathetic nervous system can't take it, you can't do it. It will kill you. So anyway,
and that's the thing. And that's you hit the nail right on the head. And it's like, and I'm going to be honest with you, as a white belt or even where I am now, is like the only thing that's going to change for you is you're going to have your moments of explosion are going to become less and less and less and less and less. But your moment of explosions are going to be so effective that it's going to be like, holy shit. So like right now, you'll go for that 30, 40 seconds to try to muscle through or to get what you're going to get. As you progress, through that belt structure, and as you get more and more technique, you're going to see that explosion is going to go from like, all right, I'm going to work really hard for 30, 40 seconds to, no, now I'm only going to work hard for 10 seconds. I'm going to get what I got to get. And then now the rest of the time is going to be that relaxation. That's the only real difference in it. But and like you said, it makes that that nervous system, how it's acting, it's only working for that short period of time instead of that long, drawn out duration.
Yeah, the way it's supposed to work.
The way it's supposed to work. And it's funny. It's like everyone's like, "Oh, you like rolling with white belts?" I'm like, "Listen, I love rolling with white belts." And they're like, "Oh, you're just saying that?" I'm like, "No, because they're unpredictable." Like you go with a higher belt, it's like I know if I do this, there's probably only a couple of responses I'm going to get. Whereas if you go with a white belt, you're going to do something like, why the fuck did you do that? I'm not used to it. So it's like, I always try to tell me, I learn as much from rolling with a white belt as I do an upper belt, because that white belt doesn't do the things that normally, or so to say, in jiu-jitsu, as you get higher up, that you would do. Because, you never roll and give you back. Whereas, sometimes the white belt is going to roll and give it back.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
So, yeah. Well, listen, that's a self-correcting error. I'm going to let you know. Eventually, you're going to be like, all right, I'm not turning my back no more. It's I tell all the guys, like, how do I stop doing this? I go, just eventually one day it's going to click, man. You're going to get tired of your back getting taken, or you're going to get tired of this arm bar, and all of a sudden it clicks, and you're like, so it's self-correcting. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Just keep on grinding.
Well, cool, man. I could probably talk to you all day, but I promised my kids I'd get them lunch, so I'm overdue for that.
Good for you. How many kids you have?
4, actually.
Oh, 4. What are their ages?
Yeah. Let me see if I remember. 13, 11, 6, and 2.
Okay. I got 2 16-year-olds, a boy and a girl, and my girlfriend has the one son who's 15. But yeah, dude, let me tell you, that's why I always tell everybody, always make time for the kids, man. They ground you, man. That's I always love hanging out with my kids when I can have the opportunity to. And I always try to tell everybody, be that family person, don't forget where you come from. And it's one guy that I took a course with said that his wife called one day because his son got bit by a dog, and the wife called, and what mode did he go to? He went to cop mode. Calm down. I got this. I got it. Blah, blah, blah. And I think he said like a week later that his wife ended up yelling at him. She goes, we just called because I didn't need the cop. I needed dad. And I was like, oh shit, that stuck to me, man. I was like, because in our field, what do? We try to become very controlling. We want to control every scenario. Where sometimes when that, your kids call you, they don't want you to control. They want dad, so definitely enjoy those kids, man. What are you making them for lunch? Hopefully something good. Taking them for some Mexican. Oh, nice. And your son's training, or he's just beating you up in the living room on that one photo I saw?
He's a wrestler, and I've been trying to get him on the mat. So we'll see. I think he's pretty close to doing it. Nice, man. Hey, listen, good talking to you. Anytime you need anything, just reach out, man. You get stuck on a mat at all, you have any questions, just reach out, man. Keep on pumping out your good stuff, man. It's good vibes, man. Right on. And where can people find you on social media and stuff? Yeah, they can find me at 10-1. That 10-1 is Officer Needs Assistance by Us. So it's 10-1 BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And like I said, anybody's into jiu-jitsu, anybody has any law enforcement questions, just reach out, ask, man, because that's the way we learn. We learn from each other. It doesn't matter where you are. Very easy to get a hold of. And like I said, I just like-minded people, surround ourselves with it, and we'll get through this nightmare. Right on, man. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, Anthony, I appreciate it, man. Be good. Stay safe, okay? Yeah, you too. Okay, goodbye.